I believe we may be sitting on a webbot hit. Although when you read it, it sounds, you know, when you read this, you know, when it came out a month and a half, 2 months ago, whatever, it sounds like it's gonna be worse when you read it. You know, like what you're expecting is gonna be worse. And Cliff High, the owner of the webbot, has always said the webbot from day one always errs on the side of seeming worse than it may end up being. It's just the nature of it. It can't control it. Which could be a good thing if you read these reports. So I'm going to read you something that just happened either today or last night in Japan. At least 6 people died and 18 were missing after unprecedented rains hit the Japanese island of Kyushu. Keyword here, 50,000 residents were ordered to evacuate as the rains fell during the early hours of Thursday morning. Forced to leave, forced evacuations. At the peak of the rain's intensity, some locations recorded over 100 millimeters of rain in just 1 hour. Particularly badly hit were the prefectures of Kumamoto and Oita prefectures, where some locations reported over 500 millimeters of rain in 24 hours. According to the Japanese Meteorological Agency, this is the heaviest rain that the region has ever experienced. Now, what are the chances, you know, being 2012 and all, galactic alignment, sun problems, space problems, magnetic field of the Earth, way over 90% of it deteriorated, the magnetic field, or the shield. Solar flares, bigger ones happening more and more. Again, this alignment, this 2012 date is real. The outcome, I have no idea what it's going to be. But I can see things that are happening. And by chance, we're on this date. So when and whether it's a flood, whether it's volcanic activity, whether it's high level above 7 or whatever more Richter scale earthquakes or whatever it is, just weather, terra, entity related, all I always read about is broke record. Matter of fact, when I was in Tennessee a couple weeks ago, they broke records. Heat wave. And the whole region in the area broke records. I keep hearing that, breaking records with stuff to do with the earth, as far as weather, again, whether it's weather, rain, sun, heat, whatever, or flooding, earthquakes, etc., the big stuff. So that's very interesting considering we're in 2012 and all. 100 millimeters of rain fell in 1 hour. If it fell anywhere, would cause flooding problems pretty much anywhere in the world. But with the ground already saturated, the problems in Kyushu were unavoidable. To make matters worse, more heavy rain is expected over the next few days. So 50,000 people being evacuated may turn to 100, 150, 200,000, no telling. So keep that in mind, these forceful evacuations. Here's right out of the webbot report from May of this year, 2012. This data set contains specific references to a period of intense unease that will last for 6 months. The forecast here is for Fukushima, the ongoing nuclear disaster, to contribute to the release language. Contribute, not fully, but contribute to the release language for a 6-month period that begins in very late May or June. This set extends the worry and unease language to other manifestations of nuclear disaster. These will likely be new events. This set contains references to a flight to safety, which will be directed south, and then he says next to it, parentheses, of the equator. While staying centered on this larger linguistic structure hanging under energy/sound/resonance and progressing model space forward, there appears as, and this is a nasty phrase to use, but pops to mind, a quote hotspot on July 10th, plus or minus 3 days. Today's the 12th. From this July 10th day of intensity, we have crosslinks that go out to December 14th, 2012. That day is showing with linguistics going to resolution of whatever the major problems are, I guess. Now please note that there are very, very few data points for that date, that December date, and we have not enough supporting sets to properly slot the resolution word, so it's almost like not really worth mentioning just yet. So as of this writing, The only thing we can say about the linkage is that it exists, with hints that some form of duality will be expressing between these two dates regarding Fukushima ongoing nuclear disaster. The data sets are indicated that prior to July 10th, plus or minus 3 days, the tone relative to the ongoing Fukushima disaster, and by the way, over the last few days there have been major protests in regard to Fukushima, the accident, because they want to turn on new or return on some of the old power plants, nuclear power plants, and people are, I mean, big protests. So, you know, when the webbot's getting data, for example, when the Occupy Wall Street stuff was just taking off, it talked about beheadings that would take place, and it appeared based on the data, Wall Street, riots, beheadings. Reading it, his interpretation was that are the police or whoever's going to stop these people from protesting going to cut off somebody's head on accident or whatever? That's what the data told him, so that's what he said. However, at that exact moment, and it's spot on, called Rosie O'Donnell. It didn't call her by name, but it gave the absolute, a phenomenal description of the short woman. Short arms, short temper, everything. And then she comes on the scene as like the spokesperson for the movement. And it was pretty interesting because it was a spot on prediction of this lady that would come out and join the movement. Having said that, 3 times, I believe, 3 separate times in a very short period of time during that time frame, there were beheadings in Mexico that made the news. Now, granted, what the heck does that have to do with protests and expecting a beheading at the protest site? It's the nature of the webbot. It cannot perfectly predict something like that all the time. Sometimes it can. Other times there'll be news of something that's not quite related, but it happened at the same time, so it appears that it's related because I guess the way the webbot works or how it gets its data, I don't know. So he keeps referring to Fukushima, but we also, and we've had some news on that lately, by the way, and some of the side walls of reactor 4 appear to be caving in, and if that thing goes, we're in deep trouble. So anyways, the data sets are indicating that prior to July 10th, plus or minus 3 days, the tone relative to the ongoing Fukushima disaster will change to something else. One of conflict and trouble, just as the disaster word shifts within the public consciousness over to catastrophe or cataclysm. The idea is that yet more of the same do-nothing intellectual and moral failure from leaders can be expected. So we have the word changing from Fukushima conflict to catastrophe and cataclysm. And 50,000 people, I was just watching video of the flooding. It looked like the Fukushima day, or not Fukushima, but the tsunami from last year that hit Japan. It looked like I was watching the streets being flooded as if a tsunami just hit. That's what I was watching on the news just a little while ago. Massive flood. I mean, not just a flood that you think water's rising. I'm talking raging river flowing down streets and stuff. People trapped, trying to escape with their life, trying to swim through it and epically failing, etc. So, the immediacy data that rises to the surface of our attention in model space, or the webbot, that seems to break the silence, are sets going to the idea of swimming/fleeing to escape, and avoiding nets, and running for life, and chaos, and many other expressions along these same emotional lines. As part of the fleeing for life subset, there are links over to a descriptor set of humans or people who will be struck to sit or forced by their body needs. I can't go any further, I gotta stop. To stop and sit until death. This set is linked over to paralysis, but only loosely, as though the word will be bandied about in relation to this forecast. I have no idea, out of the many people who died over there, did some of them run for their lives to get away from the flood and have to sit only to get swept away anyways? No telling. Maybe some footage will come out, maybe it won't, no idea. But damn, does this sound like something that just happened in Japan today? Exactly in the time frame it said to start paying attention. Again, reading that in the rest of the report in full, there's a bigger picture. and it seems a lot worse, because it looks like, oh my God, Fukushima disaster gets a lot worse. And you know what? It still might, because those walls in reactor 4 aren't getting better. They're buckling. There's problems. So I think this could be like the beginning of something larger to come. However, the timing, the date, the descriptor words in here versus what I just read and watched on the news in Japan, the flooding, 50,000 forced to relocate, swimming, fleeing for lives. I mean, are you kidding me? I'm gonna go ahead and say this is a Webbot hit. Take care.